In a lot of ways, a number of industries I'm sure are going through this. For the restaurant business, this is our ultimate challenge because it's an existential threat for so many chains, individual locations, and the businesses associated with supporting the industry. It's wild times, but the discipline, rigor, and not being overly aggressive, but not being under aggressive is, I think, going to be the key.
Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for tuning into the podcast. Our goal here is to interview guests and share information that will help you run a stronger, more profitable, and more efficient restaurant operation. So in this week's episode, I'm speaking with Mr. Mark Finnegan, and he is the Chief Marketing and Information Officer for a 200-unit Western chain. It's called Waba Grill. Now, interestingly, in second quarter of 2020, when the pandemic first hit, Waba Grill registered a 40% increase in sales growth. And then they ended the year of 2020 during the pandemic with record sales. They've also been named by Nation's Restaurant News as one of the top 500 performing chains. It's a fast casual concept, and they focus on rice bowls and healthy proteins, grains, veggies, rice bowls, that sort of thing, in a fast casual concept. So we can learn so much from a chain that grew that much during the pandemic. They obviously went through everything we all went through, operating during the worst of times, so they have lots to share. So stay tuned.
You're tuned in to the Restaurant Rockstars podcast. Powerful ideas to rock your restaurant. Here's your host, Roger Bodwin.
Guys, I've always believed in systems to run a really effective restaurant. They say you have a system if you can walk away and leave your place for a day, a week, or a month, and it's just as successful, just as profitable when you return, if not more so. Now, the staff are really the foundation of this, and it all comes down to the word empowerment. If you've got really great people, and if you can develop those people to have your back, and to run it as if they owned it, treat everything as if they had to pay for it, that's a super powerful system. Once you have the staff in place, it really comes down to three things. It comes down to 1, staff training, development, recognition, and rewards to create what I call your dream team. How to empower your team to think and act like owners and to treat everything as if they owned it and had to pay for it. And to deliver amazing guest service experiences to your customers. To serve and sell, because sales are the lifeblood of your business. Not allowing order takers on the floor, but teaching everyone to recognize opportunities and make suggestions that we know the customers will enjoy and appreciate. It all comes down to training. Number 2, cost controls and maximizing profit. You need to know your critical financial numbers on a weekly basis, and it only takes 10 minutes, but you need to understand these things. How about your daily break even? How much it costs you to open the doors to your restaurant each day? Inventory is not just walking around and figuring out what your order is that week. It's knowing the true value of your goods on hand at any given point in time, and you need this information to be able to calculate your true food and beverage costs. Your labor costs are also important, and running a weekly labor analysis against sales. If you know these things, I can teach you how to maximize your profit and control your costs. And then number 3 is what I call marketing firepower and affinity. Affinity is defined as a really powerful sense of loyalty and belonging where your customers become raving fans and they're like an army of brand ambassadors spreading the word for your restaurant. Well, all of this is included in the Restaurant Rockstars Academy. If you really want to take your restaurant to the next level, post-pandemic, things are heating up, customers are coming back. Now's the time to really maximize your opportunities, maximize your sales and profits, and create that dream team staff. Check it out at restaurantrockstars.com. It's the Restaurant Rockstars Academy.
Rockstars, let me tell you about 7 Shifts. 7 Shifts is a modern labor management platform designed for restaurateurs, by restaurateurs. Effective labor management is more important than ever to maximize profit and success, especially now as restaurants begin to reopen and expand their teams. Trusted by over 500,000 restaurant professionals, 7 Shifts gives you the tools you need to simplify scheduling, easily manage time and attendance, communicate with your team, and retain your talent. Best of all, 7 Shifts integrates with the POS and payroll systems you already use and trust, turning your team into a competitive advantage to your business. Right now, Restaurant Rockstars listeners can get 3 months absolutely free. Get started now at 7shifts.com/restaurant rockstars. That's the number 7, SHIFTS.com/restaurant rockstars to get 3 months of industry leading labor management for free. Now, on with the episode. Hey, everybody, it's the Restaurant Rockstars podcast, and we are all about helping you to transform your business. The pandemic has been the biggest challenge this restaurant has ever faced, and now we just want you to rediscover your passion for this business and reignite that fire. So with me today, Mr. Mark Finnegan. He is the Chief Marketing and Information Officer for a hot growing concept. It's called Waba Grill, 200 locations, California and Arizona, and growing. Welcome to the show, Mark. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited about this. You know, I love talking to operators of hot concepts because there's so many key learnings for our audience, whether they are independent operators or they have a couple of multiple locations or even larger operations. There's so much we can learn from those concepts that are kind of setting the country on fire, and Waba Grill certainly is doing that. But before we get into it, let's talk about, you know, what lights you up when you're not working? What do you like to do in your free time, if you have any free time?
Well, I don't have a lot of free time, but the pandemic has caused some of my college-age children to still dwell with me, which is kind of I guess a redo of what we used to do when they were younger, but now they're back, stuck at home. So I'm reconnecting with college-age kids, finding out all the things that I don't know about, which they inform me of daily. And then, you know, so it's actually been an enjoyable time and seeing how everybody's experiencing this new reality at different ages. Other than that, I'm a rabid Chicago sports fan. So I'm usually, you know, fairly depressed most of the time. So.
Oh. Thanks for sharing. You know, it's great to connect with family, especially as we emerge from the pandemic. And it's got to be especially gratifying to have kids in college. I've got 2 teenagers, and my oldest is, well, she's a junior in high school. So we're thinking college is right around the corner. She's sort of picked out where she wants to go. I'm particularly pleased she wants to go to my business school. We've toured it already. So she's got goals, and it's always great to see your kids thrive and succeed and have big goals in mind. So I'm sure you're living that dream.
I am very proud of them. So
excellent. So Mark, let's talk about your backstory in hospitality. Did you start working at a young age in this business? Did it come later in life? And how did you get to Waba Grill?
Yeah, interesting story. So I come from a big Irish Italian family. So I used to like to tell everyone that I got to eat the best food in the world, but I was always too drunk to know it when growing up. So, but you know, my mom, of all things, didn't cook. So when my great aunt who lived with us, who did all the cooking, got to a certain age where she couldn't, we started eating out. And I pretty much have eaten out at restaurants since I was 9 years old. So that felt like home. And so when I graduated college, had a couple opportunities, but one of the ones that popped up was to be able to join an agency working on the Pizza Hut business. And so that's kind of how I started professionally. Eventually got hired by Pizza Hut and came in and was a marketing analyst for them. Had the opportunity to join Rosati's Pizza, which is also a rapidly growing chain based in Chicago. Actually, I think it's still the largest Chicago-based pizzeria in the country by units. And from there, moved on the Popeyes business. So spent some time in that system. I guess graduated from Popeyes, moved to Wendy's, had marketing manager and marketing director roles. And then I was with IHOP for a number of years, both in operations services and then in brand and menu development. So.
Wow, that's a solid gold hospitality restaurant resume. That's unbelievable. I mean, some of the leading companies out there, of course, and you've learned something from each, and you've obviously extended their marketing reach. And wow, and you're bringing all that expertise now to Waba Grill, which is amazing. You know, being in this business, Mark, we have a tendency when we eat out to have a very critical eye of restaurants and how they operate. And we know more behind the scenes than the typical guest in a restaurant does. But I'm sure that also leads to new ideas, because new ideas come from anywhere, marketing ideas, menu ideas. I mean, do you, when you go out to restaurants, do you kind of take your restaurant hat off, or do you kind of just like me sort of see things happening that the average guest wouldn't see?
You know, going to restaurants for me has always been kind of an immersive experience. Like I mentioned, it always felt like home, and I'm just fascinated by how, whether it's a chain restaurant or a mom and pop, why they do what they do, what are they intentional about, and how do they bring that kind of unique, whatever is unique about them, how do they institutionalize that and really make it, something that the guest can depend on. And I think that's especially when you're in a chain restaurant, I think you're looking for things that can be exciting, but also familiar and predictable. And that's really the kind of the challenge, is how do you balance on both sides of that edge? Because certainly things that are less exciting, easier to reproduce, are more familiar and predictable. Exciting is a little harder to achieve on an ongoing basis. So that's really the dance for, I think, today's restaurants.
With all your experience, was Waba on your radar at any point, or did it just sort of happen out of the blue? Were you recruited? Did you find the opportunity? What did you see in Waba Grill that said, hey, that's my next gig?
Yeah, so I was actually recruited. A colleague of mine was brought in to, Waba started in 2006, grew very, very rapidly, probably grew faster than they even knew what to do with, and just were very, very successful. And then, like all concepts that grow quickly, they kind of got to that point of like, oh, it's not just about opening more locations. There's got to be some infrastructure. There needs to be a scalable sort of approach to all disciplines, supply chain, marketing, all of those different things. They brought in a former colleague of mine that really laid the groundwork for Waba to kind of take that next step from being a medium-sized local, chain to something that could scale to additional markets and kind of sweep across the country, to use your expression.
How long have you been with the company now, Mark?
So I started with them in early 2018. And, I think the thing that attracted me to them when I first looked at the opportunity is without question, the premise of the concept, the food, really what was built by the owners, is so sound that it really just needed to be put in a position where it could be discovered on a more on a broader basis. And that, as a marketer, Kevin and I talk about this. It's sort of it's kind of nirvana for a marketer to come in and have something where the food backs you up on everything you do, and all you have to do is expose the right people at the right time and compete. And that's the joy of being associated with Waba Grill.
I was going to ask you that question, but maybe you answered it, or maybe we can get in a little deeper on it. I was curious if you've seen, I'm hearing that the foundation of the original concept was very sound. And I'm curious if there's been much of an evolution of the brand over time. Has it changed, or is it still true to the original vision, like from start to finish?
Yeah, the vision of the brand is very much intact from its earliest days. Eat smart, be healthy is the sort of our branding marching orders, if you will.
Okay.
And,
sure.
it's kind of, it's in a way, it's kind of a uniquely LA brand. LA, there's this, and I guess Southern California in general, there's this sort of mythology about it that, there's this, you can ski in the morning, you can swim and surf in the afternoon, and go to Disneyland and all of those different things. But there's some realities about living in Southern California. It's expensive. There's tons of traffic. People are pressed for time. You want to eat healthier, but sometimes it's hard. And so the premise of Waba Grill was, how do we make something delicious that supports that kind of LA lifestyle, but it's got to be at on-the-go speed. And in that regard, I think our founders were, really, their instincts were so pure, and their ability to create something, it was so durable that it's, we've added things to the menu, but fundamentally it's the same concept it started out to be.
Well, it's ideally situated. First, we've got a couple things in common. I worked at an advertising agency on Wilshire Boulevard in LA for a while, back in the early 90s. And you mentioned you were working on pizza. Did you say you were working on the Pizza Hut account?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, I actually worked in the car business. I worked on the Acura business for American Honda Motor Company as an account executive. And, that was such a broad, widening experience for me to, to then apply those marketing skills and ideas to my business later on. But I guess what I was starting to say is, it's kind of universal knowledge that trends begin in California and then they sort of trickle east and literally globally, just because of the coolness factor of California. But, back when I lived in LA, it was definitely a health conscious clientele. People were outdoor active. It's like they wanted to eat healthy. And I don't think that trend has changed at all. I think that's still spot on, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the thing that, I'm not from LA originally. I grew up in the Midwest, but when I moved out here, one of the things, you have this sort of sense of what, cuisine in LA is going to be about. And it's cool, and it's inventive, and it's all of these things, but it's not easy to access all the time. You got to drive there. There's constant traffic. Everything's expensive. A lot of people are on a budget, and to try and do something that's good for you when you're just trying to, navigate all of these challenges, that's really where Waba Grill's sweet spot is that you get the benefit of all of those fast food places without having to eat fast food. And that's, I think, the brilliance of the concept.
And Waba is primarily a fast casual concept. Is there no sit-in space? It's takeout, curbside delivery, that sort of thing?
No, primarily it started out as a sit down and just takeaway. And, when in its earliest days, it was probably 80% sit down. Was a very big, and remains a very big, lunch business. So a lot of folks leaving, wherever their place of work is, going, sitting down. It's perfect in that regard because we're extremely fast. I actually had an article done where, we didn't realize until the pandemic how fast we were. And when some of the delivery companies started to say, your service times, when something happens on a digital order and the restaurant doesn't get it, and the driver shows up and they essentially initiate the order, your average service time on those orders is faster than our average service time for all orders that are correct with all other concepts. So, and I think that's what people really rewarded us for. And they're like, wait a minute, it's fast, it's affordable, it tastes great, what's the catch? And I think what we're starting to expose more and more customers to is there is no catch. It's a concept that works.
Let's dive into the menu. Now, mostly it's rice bowls with protein, vegetables, grains, that sort of thing. But you also have fresh salads, of course. Is the menu, what's the R&D process? And how often do you add new menu items, that sort of thing? Do customers say, oh, I love this, what if you had that? Do you take customer recommendations, or is it all just a very strategic process where you roll out new items for specials that are limited time only? What's the strategy with the menu?
Well, so if you think about the time frame that I started was 2018, there really wasn't that sophisticated of an R&D process. So it was primarily clean proteins, fresh vegetables, white or brown rice, either in a bowl format, or there's a plate format, which is essentially just a little more food, a salad, and very common plating in the Los Angeles area. But there it was a Waba sauce, which is kind of an interpretation of teriyaki sauce, and it's delicious. But that was really it. And so our R&D process started with the sauces, and the consumers drive it in that the concept is extremely popular with the general market. It's very popular with Asian consumers. It's also very popular with Latin American consumers. And really, from an Asian consumer, Latin American consumer perspective, their palates are so much more evolved than the general market. So they really, freshness cues, spice combinations, those types of things. So our R&D is really focused on being a Latin Asian fusion. And so we started by expanding our sauce roster, taking up the heat level. We have a garlic serrano sauce, which is actually something that Chef Roy Choi came up with. And it's actually his sauce that does very well. We have a spicy Waba sauce now. We have a sweet spicy sweet chili sauce. So we've expanded that way. And then we've taken a look at what other proteins can we bring to the menu. So we're one of the few concepts that does rice bowls that also has salmon and shrimp. And we recently just introduced what is called a plant-inspired steak, which is our, that whole trend in the menu development of the restaurant industry of having plant-based proteins. It fits, into Waba Grill seamlessly. So we're really excited about that. Frankly, our biggest new product introduction was dumplings. So actually a side item, and they're just wildly popular. So
with the Waba sauce or your choice of sauce? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fun.
What's in the dumpling?
So they're pork and veggie. And we're going to work through kind of waiting to see with some of our partners what is new in the veggie only space. We don't know if we want to go with something that's a vegetarian dumpling or a meat inspired dumpling that's just made with plant-based protein. So we're, that's kind of next up.
Did you roll that out in a couple test locations as a beta before it went out to the network itself? Or do you focus group? Do you have tests with, good customers, that sort of thing? Like, what's that process?
Yeah, I think because my background's with bigger brands, I started out with pizza, which was very, very data forward, very, customer centric. A lot of those, techniques for figuring out what customers think of what you're doing, and then having a base of company restaurants that you could test them in. So we introduced that kind of discipline and rigor to the brand, and all of the things you mentioned we do. We have somebody who's in charge of product development, and we do a lot of customer intercepts, really let the customer kind of drive. We may come up with the idea or try to identify the trend, but we really let the customer be the court of final opinion on what we roll out.
What's the vibe of a typical Waba Grill? If you could sort of visualize for our audience and bring us into a typical location, what do we see? What do we smell? What do we feel? What's the staff interaction like? Is there a lot of action behind the counter? Like, tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat setup. So, early on, our founders wanted a little bit of food theater. So you can kind of see all the proteins being chopped. You can see them being cooked and finished off. You can watch things being plated. And, I kind of identified early on in my own experience that, it looks like they don't take anything too seriously except for the food. So, the vibe is very accessible, digital menus, a lot of color, sort of a lot of celebration of the attributes that make the food special, which is sort of unapologetically clean and fresh and nothing to hide. So, that's sort of the vibe that I think people identify with right away.
Fantastic. What's a typical location? Like, obviously you carefully select locations for new units and that sort of thing. Are you sort of strategically looking for other anchors that may enhance what you're offering now? Like larger stores that are a big draw? Is it heavy traffic areas? Is it neighborhoods? Like what is the location dynamic?
Yeah, that's is shifting quite a bit, obviously, with COVID. But basically, it started out as an inline concept. Perfect for a strip mall. From a franchise perspective, it's a relatively low investment. It's always been that's really been a passion point for our founders, and it's a fairly high margin business. So you can get a lot of throughput, especially because of the speed out of a fairly small inline location. That just turns a lot of customers very, very quickly. We do have some drive-through locations; those have exploded in terms of their throughput. The other thing is, the original sort of floor plans didn't really envision a digital component to the business, but because the concept's so lifestyle oriented, in a way, all the locations are kind of already set up in a way that we can accommodate digital ordering. And we've recently just rolled out a new future design that's going to drive our remodel program and all of our new builds, that sort of envisions more kind of an upfront commitment to digital ordering, which is we were a relatively late entrant to that space, but we've made some moves that made us really set us up for kind of unexpected success, I guess, during the pandemic. So that it really worked out.
It's incredible because the pandemic has devastated much of this industry, but there are certain concepts that have really, really thrived, and yours seems to be one of them. But last year were the best sales in company history. So did the pandemic not affect Waba Grill at all, or what were the lasting implications of when it first hit and all that? How did you achieve record sales?
Yeah. So, and again, kind of starting with my history in 2018, we were really just starting to build an infrastructure. First thing we had done is we moved to a cloud-based POS system. We, at the time, weren't really, some franchisees had started with digital ordering through third-party delivery companies, but the majority of the system wasn't on anything. We quickly made a move into that space. And what we were kind of putting in the product pipeline were things like a value menu, family meals. Those were things that kind of we were moving towards prior to the pandemic hitting. Well, all of a sudden the pandemic hits, and there's this, we were hit just like everybody else. We had shutdowns initially, and we had an 8-week period where, I think, like everybody else, it looked kind of grim. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, well, what's our response going to be? And we kind of looked at what we were going to do anyway. We said, this is exactly the recipe for how you would respond to this situation. Let's move aggressively on digital ordering. Let's roll out family meals. Let's roll out the value menu, because all the consumer need states that were driving those initiatives are just magnified now with the pandemic. So we just moved forward, and that's, I think, what was so surprising is the combination of moving to digital marketing, digital ordering is a primary focus. Introducing value and family meals was the recipe for what it took to navigate, a pandemic where people are locked at home, not at the office, and they need additional options than maybe the 2 or 3, 4 places that they did delivery from. They're eating there every day of the week. They expanded their options, and as soon as we get in the consideration set for a consumer, we outperform a lot of their other choices. So that's our competitive advantage, I think.
Okay, fantastic. Let's talk about company culture. How would you define that for Waba Grill?
Yeah, so the company culture, we have 3 visionary founders that in general were very conservative, very franchisee forward. So really every decision that they made, they did right by the food. They set up the concept the way they wanted to. But at that point, a lot of owners kind of look at, okay, well, what's good for our business and how can franchisees play a role in that? they kind of looked at it differently. They're like, how can we do right by the franchisee? Let's not do anything that would make it more difficult for them to not get a return on their investment. And that's really the fundamental premise. Our CEO, Andrew Kim, who had been the general counsel for Waba Grill since they started, and recently became the CEO. That's his singular focus, is how do we become an organization that does better by its franchisees than we did the day before. So I think that's the number one culture piece. And then they've kind of turned over to the executive team. You focus on taking care of the customer, and what is it that we need to make the brand accessible, to operate it. And a lot of small companies, a lot of private companies struggle to make investments. Our owners, they make big bets on the tools and resources we need. They don't balk it. So we have world-class tools that a lot of brands our size would struggle to justify investing in, but it's paid off. And I think that's, we've gone from really being, I think, behind the curve technologically and from digital ordering to kind of, in some regards, lapping the field and playing offense versus defense.
There's not let's move on to talk about labor. There's not an operator out there, whether it's a single independent unit or it's a chain, that's not been affected by this labor crisis right now. And everybody wants to know, how do we solve this? What's the solution? What can we do? I'm struggling to just put out the food. It's like I'm short-staffed. I'm working 24/7. I got to close certain days because I don't have the staff to handle it. I'm missing business. I mean, these are some of the industry woes right now. How has it affected Waba Grill? And do you have any ideas that have worked for your business that can work for others?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely put pressure on our operators. A lot of the things that you said, some of our original franchisees, it's very much still a family operated business. So it's a lot more family members working a lot more hours. We've gradually, as the brand has evolved, we're leaning on more larger franchise groups that may have additional concepts under their umbrella and have more of an infrastructure to go and recruit. But we're doing some of the basic things that everybody's doing. We're re-looking at wages, looking at paying for referrals, and looking at different tools to get our job offerings out in front of folks. But I think one of the ways we're addressing it is because of our operation and kind of how the food production scales. We can drive a lot of business through our digital channels without adding a lot of headcount. And so, we're part of the response to the lack of ease in hiring is to try and accelerate how fast we're driving folks to, if they don't switch all of their occasions to a digital channel, a portion of them, and really incentivizing them to, hey, you can get whatever you want at Waba Grill, but if you get it through this channel, there's more of an incentive for you to do that. And we're the one place it's really affected us is we have a couple. We're going to open the brand in Bakersfield, California, which is one of our first outer markets in a while, and they're struggling to get the initial staff filled out and of course trained. Because there just there isn't a lot of demand for restaurant jobs. So I think that's where it's impacting us. But in our existing restaurants, we're kind of keeping a lot of that pressure at bay by, driving more digital ordering.
Let's talk about delivery. What percentage is delivery to your business?
Yeah, so we are, I'll take it this way. We are about 25% of our business now is through digital channels. So that's encompasses, we have an internal delivery channel, which is fulfilled by DoorDash, but that comes through our app or our website. We partner with the four major third-party delivery companies. But one of the exciting things, and it's actually a trend that a few folks in the industry who really have their finger on the pulse of this, we're still of our digital ordering, about 75% of that is pickup, and either in a curbside format, which is a very low percentage, but really traditional pickup of, I don't want to necessarily deal with another human being, but I want to walk into the restaurant and pick up my food. And that is actually the fastest growing channel that we have. All the channels are growing, third-party delivery, internal delivery, and pickup, but pickup's growing the fastest. And so, we're supporting that trend. We're trying to, we've recently launched an LMS effort, and our chief training officer is really focused on how do we make sure that pickup experience is as intentional as any other kind of experience that we have. Because a lot of times pickup, here's your bag, and next, that's, if that channel is going to be the most popular, then it should be get as much attention and as much training as anything else we do.
One trend sort of emerged from the pandemic, and that was communication with the guest, which became so important to get business back, to explain safety protocols, to explain challenges the operator was having, that sort of explains, service limitations. Being honest and authentic with the customer really went such a long way, even in my own business. Did Waba Grill do any of that in terms of every order had some note in the bag or a unique way of communicating with the guest when the pandemic first hit? And are you still doing any of that?
Yeah, we are. And actually, it's something that makes me really proud to be associated with Waba Grill. We sat in those early meetings, I think, when everybody was, across the restaurant business, was like, what are we going to do with this loss in revenue? How, are we going to go out of business? All of those kind of conversations that were happening in offices all over the country. Our CEO and the owner said, what do we need to do for the customer? What does the customer need right now that we can help with? So they actually sourced gel packs of sanitizer, because if you recall, there was a time when sanitizer was in short supply.
Oh, absolutely.
Whatnot. And so, the reaction was, okay, well, sales are way down. We're going to add this cost. And they're like, yeah, not only are we going to do that, we're going to pay for it. So we'll just send them to the franchisees initially, and let's get sanitizer out to our customers. It never got to that point, but they were actively working on, hey, if people can't find masks, let's deliver a mask with every order. So, and we would communicate things to the customer in a way of, like, we stopped charging for delivery as soon as the pandemic hit, because the view was, hey, is that a promotional thing that we could take advantage of? Well, maybe, but really the intention was, people are having to spend a lot more money to get food. Some of them are out of work. The budget in the household is under a lot of pressure. That's something we could do. We could suffer a little bit along with them. And, we didn't over communicate that, but customers got it. And we got a lot of feedback from guests of like, you were there for me. We were all stuck at home. You rolled out these family meals. I'm stressed. We then went back, heard customers say we weren't delivering drinks, and they went back and said, yeah, this is fantastic. I still have to go to the grocery store and get, okay, we figured out how to deliver, bottled beverages at a discount. So that authenticity, and I think there's a lot of brands who did that, maybe not the majority, but a lot of them really made it about what is the customer going through and how can we play a role in getting through this together. And customers got that authenticity. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've had, 2021 is explosive for us, because things are recovering. And I know it's choppy with Delta variant and whatnot, but I think people like ordering from Waba Grill, because the next thing that happens, I think they figure we'll probably be there for them at that point too.
Let's switch to marketing, your specialty. And this is a two-part question. Many franchise companies have, in addition to a standard royalty, they also charge a marketing fee that then up-levels the chain or the network. What is your marketing strategy exactly, and what has proven to be most effective in doing just that for your franchisees?
Yeah. So, if Waba Grill when I joined, had an Achilles heel, it was that because they were so focused on franchise return on investment, they kept all their fees low. So we have one of the lowest marketing accruals of any brand that has our number of restaurants. So very early on, when I kind of looked at, how do we sort of upgrade and formalize a marketing approach that's a system-wide, growing brand approach. And my first reaction to that was, well, if we just follow a formula that exists, we're going to get our clock cleaned because we can't spend the money that even our most basic competitors
Right.
were spending.
I see that.
So we very quickly made the pivot to going all digital in our advertising and really starting on a journey to get to kind of a one-to-one marketing relationship with consumers. Some of it automated and some of it opportunistic based on weather or holidays, current events or whatnot. And we invested very heavily in things like text-based marketing and customer data platforms and things that the year before we were heavy on doing outdoor and freestanding inserts, and then a year later we're doing kind of cutting edge digital work. So, and I think that's been another piece that has allowed us to scale our marketing efforts more quickly because we're not getting to as many people as some of our competitors are, but our batting average when we do get to those customers is a lot higher, and that's a formula that's been working for us.
All right, fantastic. Now, Nation's Restaurant News is one of my favorite publications, and I've been reading that forever since I've been in the business. But you've been named one of the top 500 performing chains by Nation's Restaurant News, which begs the question, how do you maintain that all-important consistency across all your units so that and any franchise is all about consistency and standardization because you want your guests to get the very same experience in every unit, no matter which one they visit, so that they could be in any unit and they know this is exactly what my expectations are. I mean, how do you maintain that consistency?
Well, it's a challenge. I think you're right. Every restaurant company that wants to grow its footprint, that had kind of better be job number one, because you can get people in, but if you disappoint them, it's going to be a lot harder, a lot more expensive to get them back in.
Yes.
And fortunately, I have some business partners that are very experienced restaurant operators, restaurant trainers, and kind of following in a way the same formula we are for marketing. A lot of technology. We've made a real commitment to doing our training digitally and putting training videos together instead of just standard job aids and ops manuals, so we can get training in early and often to all new hires. And then I think there's been a much broader commitment to, you move what you measure. And so putting a lot of measurement systems in place of those things that are the most indicative of customers having a acceptable, repeatable experience. Then we measure the heck out of them, and then we take action when folks are maybe not paying as much attention to those things as possible. And part of the culture, and I think it's why it's important to have strong relationships with their franchisees, is that's uncomfortable because a lot of them started in an era when, hey, we just opened the doors, we had more business than we knew what to do with, and you did the best you could. When that sort of easy money, I guess, goes away, and you have to really start. One of my favorite quotes, and something that we repeat in a lot of meetings, is Michael Jordan once answered a question of like, why are you so much better than, essentially, I'm a Chicago fan, so
yes,
I'm going to editorialize, but and he said, well, and his answer wasn't that he was more gifted, or he's like, hey, being a champion begins with command of the fundamentals, and the fundamentals never change, only your attention to them. And that's like that. Really our mantra is paying attention to those fundamentals and making sure that we try and get better at those on a daily basis.
That's fantastic. Now, we talked quite a bit about your extraordinary sales success, and obviously there's a lot of repeat business that contributes to that sales success. Is your rewards app a foundational element of that? Is that really working for you? And if so, please describe how it works.
Yeah, it is. One of the moves we made when we made the commitment to go to digital ordering is we integrated our rewards program with our app. So our app is actually provided by our loyalty partner. And it just becomes, kind of the central feature. It's very easy to redeem rewards. It's very easy to get rewards. And, what we have found is that when we advertise and drive people to the app, or you can have a rewards account and use the mobile web or whatnot, that, those folks are more likely to be apostles for the brand. They spend more and they come more often than anybody else. So it's, really easy to make the commitment to spend a disproportionate amount of our funds on getting people to start that journey, getting them to sign up for the app for the first time, giving them an award or reward, at their first purchase so they can see how easy it is to use. And, it's, there's discounts involved because we're giving away free items when people earn their points, but it is something that's becoming more ubiquitous amongst bigger chains, but it is meaningful to people that, hey, I'm recognized for what I do at your establishment on an ongoing basis. And, whether it's just an extra visit a month, an extra visit every 3 months or whatnot, it adds up. And, our focus, for the rest of this year and into next year is driving as much usage of those programs as possible.
Can you mention who that loyalty partner is that you partnered with on this app?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So it's a Punch, and then it's we do that in conjunction with Olo. So they're Punch and Olo are separate organizations, but they're very hand in glove in their working relationship. So it's been very productive.
Excellent. Fantastic. Let's talk about the franchise opportunity. And obviously, it is a growing opportunity. And this pandemic, if it's done nothing, it's created lots of open space and it's created new optimism and opportunity for the future. So there are members of our audience that might be looking for a new opportunity. What are the qualifications that you're looking for? I got the sense that, your fees are lower and that your founders really, really care about giving people opportunities. So let's talk a bit about, what the franchise opportunity is all about.
Yeah, so in the greater Los Angeles metropolitan area, we think there's still room to add Waba Grills. We're still in the process really deciphering what happened in the pandemic and what is the final outcome, because I don't think we've reached that point as to who's going to be there and what's going to happen to real estate and open spots. So that's sort of, we set that aside. We're kind of still looking at that. I think when we're looking at outer markets, we're kind of at that place where what got us started was building one restaurant with one franchisee, and maybe they were replacing a job with owning a restaurant. And we still will do that, but our focus is more on attracting operators with experience and have some infrastructure. So going into a marketplace where maybe you have a franchisee of another concept that is landlocked, they're built out, but they have an HR person, they have trainers, they have district managers, and they're ready to grow, but they can't with their existing concept. So we're looking at that. And obviously, given our performance and with the dust settling from COVID, we're even rethinking some of our criteria, just because in our history we never had to really look at multi-unit deals and those types of things. We just had enough of a pipeline, and our existing franchisees did well enough that they kept wanting to add restaurants. So now we're being a little more intentional with trying to go to some of these outer markets, because one of the challenges, as you well know, you take a brand that's really solid in its home market, and we definitely don't want to be that brand that has 200 stores in LA and kind of Phoenix, and then all of a sudden there's one in New Orleans and there's one in Buffalo, and there's, we want to build some scale in the markets that we go to, and we want to go along for the ride. So we want to have skin in the game with our franchisees to try and get to brand awareness faster than we did when we first started. And with some of the tools we have and with the evolution of digital marketing, you can do that. But at the end of the day, you still need more than one restaurant in a marketplace to start to lock in a loyal customer base. So that's really our focus right now.
What would be the next area of growth that you'd be looking at? Other warm weather areas where people are outdoor active, large population centers. What do you see that down the road?
So our focus is sort of trying to emanate out from Southern California. So Bakersfield is an area of focus. We're certainly going to look at Nevada and look at building out more stores in Arizona. But we want our supply chain. We want to be very disciplined and rigorous. We're sort of in that size and place with the momentum we have that it's very tempting to start pushing out beyond what you're ready to support. And so, and that's, I think, what I value about our leadership is they want to be as successful as anybody else. They're as competitive as anybody else, but they're not reckless. And that fundamental premise of, hey, I don't want a franchisee out there that is in a place that we are going to struggle to support. And maybe that makes us go a little bit slower than somebody else, but we certainly won't step in a hole like many brands have that kind of got ahead of their skis and couldn't support their ambitions.
Do you have an exclusive relationship on purchasing with larger suppliers for obviously leverage and economies of scale and that sort of thing?
So we have historically been able to use a local supplier that serviced the greater Los Angeles metropolitan area. But obviously, as we're moving to some other areas, that we're having to relook at those relationships. Fortunately, given the executive team's background at Waba Grill, we've all worked with a lot of the big players, and it's as challenging as the restaurant business is, the distribution game is right now equally, if not more challenging. They're getting it from both ends in terms of labor, supply, bringing goods in from overseas. So we're in discussions with a number of the major suppliers to kind of set us up for our next phase of growth. But we're again being very conservative and making sure that there isn't another shoe to drop that sort of leaves us hanging in a marketplace that we thought we were going to be supported in, but we're struggling to get that follow through.
Yeah, that's another challenge that the industry is facing, and that supply chain issues are affecting suppliers as well, and the labor shortage is affecting suppliers, and the lack of warehouse pickers and truck drivers, and you can't get your deliveries and that sort of thing. So all these challenges are negatively impacting the business.
Yeah, it's in a lot of ways. A number of industries I'm sure are going through this. For the restaurant business, this is our ultimate challenge because it's an existential threat for so many chains, individual locations, and the businesses associated with supporting the industry. It's wild times, but the discipline, rigor, and not being overly aggressive, but not being under aggressive is, I think, going to be the key. And it'd be cliche for me to say it's unlike anything we've ever seen, but it is unlike anything we've ever seen.
It absolutely is. What would you say your best advice is just for operators if they've survived to this point? It's like, what's the future look like, and what would you tell them to keep going and just move forward in a positive direction?
Yeah, I think the first thing is you got to maintain hope. A restaurant experience, and I've, going back to my childhood, you have a bad day, but, hey, we're going to go to fill in the blank. And you're hopeful that you're excited about what you're going to eat and that you're going to get away and maybe sit down, be with their parents, be with their friends, be whatever. So the operators have to remain hopeful. And then I think the other key is got to be disciplined and rigorous about the decisions that you make, but you can't be too conservative. You got to seize the opportunities that present themselves. And it's tough because, I'm sure there's a lot of operators who just want to curl up in a ball and, hope it all goes away, but it won't. It won't unless we make it go away. And so I think that's the advice is hopeful aggression.
There you go. Well, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing time with us today, Mark. The website, of course, is wabagrill.com. That was the Restaurant Rockstars podcast, and we will see the audience in our next episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks so much for sharing all that great information, Mark. It's clear to me that Waba Grill has all the systems dialed in that operation because it really comes down to controls, both financial controls, marketing controls, a real plan for everything. And that's really what a system is. When we're talking about financial controls, there's so many different things that restaurant operators are missing. They're leaving thousands of dollars on the table that I've seen in my experience with the clients I've worked with the clients that I hope to work with, and operators that I talk to. It's amazing how much is not being done that is so critical to an effective, profitable restaurant operation, such as calculating your true food, beverage, and labor costs and knowing what your sweet spot is and knowing what your daily break even is and having budgets and really dialing things in. I can't tell you how many restaurants I've come across that are busy restaurants, especially now during the pandemic, and they're filling their seats, but they're just not making any money. Their bank account is not growing, and that's because they don't have a handle on those financial controls and ways in which they can maximize their profit. So why not check out our Finances 101 program? It's a complete crash course in restaurant finances. If you hate numbers or you're terrible at math, it doesn't matter. We make it super simple. It's a series of 14 audio tutorials. And when I mean audio, you press the play button and in 3 to 5 minutes, it explains all these concepts and it helps you put these systems in place. And it teaches you what those numbers are and what they mean and where to find them and how to plug them into 14 fully automated Excel spreadsheets that we also provide. It also tells you about common mistakes that restaurant owner operators and managers have made and how to avoid those mistakes, and then what the end result should look like and what the sweet spot should be. It's a complete, like I said, crash course. And as a bonus, it also includes a book that I wrote called Rock Your Restaurant. And it really chronicles my 27-year journey in the restaurant business, starting with no experience, starting a high volume, high profit wood-fired pizzeria that turned into a bar and everything else, and all the mistakes I made early on and all the pitfalls and challenges that I ran into, and then how I really started to crank this place and really make money. And there's so many key learnings there as well. So it's entertaining. You can read the book. It also comes in an audio version, and all this is included. And it's sort of a prelude to the financial course. It talks about all these financial concepts and what I did and how I systemized my restaurants, and then it gives you the template to do the very same thing. So why not check out our Finances 101 course at restaurantrockstars.com. Thanks again to our sponsors, Cisco and 7 Shifts, the all-in-one labor management platform. And please leave us a question. You can go to the show notes for this episode, and about halfway down the page, you'll see a button and it says, Ask Us Anything. You can leave a recorded message for me. I'll answer it, and then I may, in fact, share it on the air in the future, in a future episode of the podcast. So thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Restaurant Rockstars podcast. For lots of great resources, head over to restaurantrockstars.com. See you next time.